Thanks for having me. My name is Fredrik Svantes. I work as a protocol security researcher at the Ethereum Foundation. I'm basically here to discuss a bit about the current state of Ethereum security in 2024. I'm giving a bit of a review of what's been going on so far. So, as mentioned, I work in the protocol security research team at the Ethereum Foundation. We do a bunch of different things. We do, for example, security coordination between client teams and researchers. We do a lot of manual reviews. We do fuzzing. We manage the bug bounty program. We collaborate with external auditors and many, many other things. Throughout the year, we've done a lot of different things. Some of the things we've done is that we have been spending time doing manual reviews of Denkun and Pectra, as well as various critical dependencies. This means that we verify the specifications, the EIPs, we look at all the clients on the execution layer side, the consensus layer side, basically verify that they are doing as they should be doing according to the hard forks that are going to take place. We also build a lot of fuzzers. So we have a big range of fuzzers today, such as Beacon Fuzz, which is meant to do differential fuzzing on consensus layer clients. We have various EVM fuzzers for the different execution layer clients. Also fuzzers for the different languages like Solidity. We started working on some fuzzers for Fey and other things. We also added a bunch of new fuzzers. So we added a new EVM fuzzer. We've also started to fuzz more cryptographic libraries such as Constantine, CKCG, and others. And one of the main focus areas we have had this year is the network layer. So the network layer is a very important part because if there are vulnerabilities in the network layer, it can lead to things such as denial of service attacks and other things, which could be very bad for the network. So this is an area that's kind of been underexplored with regards to security in the past. But at the same time, it's probably the area where we have found the most vulnerabilities in the past. So to kind of fix that, we have started to focus a bit more on the network layers, such as libp2p, indevp2p, etc. In 2024. For the bug bounty program, we also added a few new in-scope targets. The first one we added was Ref, which was during the summer. And then just very recently, we added the Viper compiler. So that means that we now have both the Solidity compiler and the Viper compiler as in-scope. So people who are interested in finding vulnerabilities in Viper could just have a look to see if they find any and then report it through the bug bounty program, and we will provide rewards for any valid findings. Looking at trends in security, in Web3 security in particular, we can see that there's been a bit of a shift in the different types of attacks taking place and what the attackers are targeting. Looking back a few years, it was primarily various vulnerabilities in smart contracts that people exploited. And this was partly due to people maybe not being very familiar with how to do secure coding. Solidity, for example, maybe there weren't as many auditing companies, maybe not as many projects did do an audit, etc. But this has, in the recent years, had quite a shift. And now the amount of people who are good with Solidity security and the developers being aware of what they should avoid and so forth has improved a lot. And that means that it's become harder for an attacker to exploit these previously exploited weaknesses. So basically, what has happened is that people have started looking into new areas of obtaining these stolen funds. One thing that has grown quite a bit recently is the increase of Web2 attacks on projects. So while the project might have a very secure Solidity code when deployed, they might have an insecure setup when it comes to the Web 2 parts, such as the front end and other things. So, for example, they might not have secured their account sufficiently. They might not be using two-factor authentication where they should be using it. They might have committed some private key or API key or whatever into their GitHub history at some point. They might be using a domain provider or DNS provider which doesn't have sufficient security, and as such, their Web 2 part of their project could then become compromised. And this could, of course, lead to very bad things, especially for end users, but also for product as well. For example, a product being used by a lot of people might have their DNS hijacked and pointed to a different website than people are expecting it to be at. And when they're interacting with the contracts in question, they might end up having all their funds drained. So the big shift here is that many people are talking about Web 2 security in a completely different way that compared to what I've seen in the past years. In the past years, it was mainly about contract security, etc. But now in 2024 and probably end of 2023, there's been a lot more discussions about how we can make sure that the Web 2 parts are also secure. Social engineering has also been increased. This is a multitude of different types of attacks. It's attacks going from email phishing, it can be exit scams in my opinion, it can be things such as drainers and other things. These are quite common, especially in Web 2. Historically, they've been very common as a way to obtain access because a system can be quite complex to breach. If a server has all the updates and is continually updated and set up in a secure way, then it's unlikely that they're going to be. It's not super likely that they're going to be compromised. So as an attacker, it's a lot easier to instead utilize social engineering and get the administrators to do things that they shouldn't be doing, basically. This can be to trick people into sending funds, such as CEO scams, or it can be getting them to add a new user, for example, or providing their password or stuff like that. And as such, obtaining access to what they want. This has, as I mentioned, increased. One of the fairly common ways now is that there are these groups that send out job offers to people in order to kind of continue with the job process. You need to download a project, then you need to debug this or run this and fix it. And by doing so, you basically execute a vulnerability or an exploit that will provide access to your computer, which is then used to extract private keys and so forth. Drainers is also something that has increased very much. There are multiple reasons for this, but the primary reason is probably that it's very, very easy to actually deploy these drainers. They are basically provided as a service. So people can easily deploy them, provide a percentage to the creator for having created the drainer, and then keep the rest for themselves. This is the amount of these going live every day is quite staggering, and it's very hard to stop them. But the most important thing is obviously to check and double check and triple check. Does this seem legit? Is it too good to be true? Should I really click to sign this transaction? Because if you do sign it and it is a drainer, then they are likely to take all your funds, and there's not much that can be done afterwards. The pig butchering scams is also on the rise a lot. It's estimated that between January 2020 to 2024, it's about $75 billion that's been lost due to pig butchering. Basically what this is that people pretend to be someone who might be romantically interested in you, and after a couple of weeks, they will try to get people to invest in various things, and then they just never see the money anymore. I think the average pig butchering scam takes about 42 days. So it's not a very long con, but it's also not a very short one. So people do manage to build up trust, etc. during this time. They do it quite advanced. They have these centers where people work in. They sit there. They have a bunch of various personas, and they write up information about everyone they speak with. They often have actresses that will provide, like, send video messages and so forth, like personalized ones. So it can appear very real, but this is, yeah, it's unfortunately a very common way of being scammed, and it's increasingly becoming even more popular. Yeah, ransomware is definitely also continuing. It's maybe being talked about a bit less, partly because it's maybe becoming too common these days in a sense. It's not really newsworthy anymore to say that, you know, company X got a victim of ransomware and they ended up paying X $1,000 to do it. Instead, the news is more if there's a very, very large or something out of the ordinary that happens, then that might get some news, but it is still growing. In 2024 so far, there are stats that show that it's been like over $500 million have been paid out throughout 2024 in ransomware attacks. So it is unfortunately still something that's happening. And the drainers, by the way, which we discussed as well, giving some types of stats, we can say that, you know, there are hundreds of thousands of victims who lose money to this continuously each year, and it's, you know, we're talking about hundreds of millions of dollars. So it is a very big issue that should definitely be worked on, and is actively being worked on to kind of help minimize the risks through the different wallet providers, etc., that are implementing various security measures to try to minimize the risk of people falling victim of these things. I think one thing to consider here is also that it is like all of these things require you to utilize or give out your private key in some way. And I do think that there should be a bit more thought and more carefulness with regards to key management practices. You know, potentially looking into using something like multisigs or, you know, account abstraction where that makes sense, or other things, so that it's less likely that your private key will be used for something that it shouldn't be used for. So with regards to public good security, then we kind of talked now about all the bad stuff that's happening and how, you know, these types of attacks are increasing, partly because there are more users being onboarded and there are more potential victims and more resources put into this by malicious actors. But there are also a lot of good initiatives happening to try to counterbalance this. So part of this is that there are a lot of security grants being given out by various parties and with various objectives. I've listed a few here that's been given by the EF, basically as ways to try to improve security for people, and this is to ensure that we have additional security in Ethereum to counterbalance these threat actors. So as you can see on some of these things, you can see that we have the Red Guild mentioned here, and the Red Guild is a organization or a group of people that we are providing funding to through the Ethereum Foundation. And the Red Guild is a group that is primarily based in Latin America, and they're providing public good security services in various ways. Like, they are doing the downloadable DeFi. They're doing a lot of training sessions and other things, which is public good security. And they're also doing some public good security auditing and so forth, and creating some best practice documentations and so forth. There's also the Security Alliance. The Security Alliance is a group of people that consist of many people from various organizations. They do a lot of different types of public good work. They have a SEAL 911, which people can reach out to if they are a victim of a scam or hack or something like that. Or they also have various other things like the Safe Harbor Agreement, which they're working on. They have SEAL War Games and other initiatives as well, like the SEAL ISAC, the SEAL frameworks, and more. These are things that are meant to help provide more public good security within the ecosystem. The other thing that we are doing is bug bounty competition. The bug bounty competition is practically what we have today with the bug bounty program, except that it's for a time-boxed period. We are doing this for running the competition for about 8 weeks. During this time, people are meant to find as many vulnerabilities as they can, and then we have a large pot at the end, which people are sharing depending on what kind of this they find. The idea behind this is also that we are trying to make it a more decentralized event. So instead of the EF being the sole sponsor of this, we have multiple parties in the ecosystem that are helping and doing, taking part of sponsoring the reward pool for this. And that's it for the status update for 2024 so far. Yeah, I'm looking forward to presenting a bit more about this at DevCon in November. Thank you.